Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. My name's Jack Heineman. I'm Director of the Center of Integrated Research and Biosafety.
My name's Andrew McCabe. I'm a member of the Centre for Integrated Research and Biosafety and a co-author on the submission.
So thank you for having us. I would like to support what we heard earlier from Dairy New Zealand, that the bill needs significant amendment to be proportionate, to create a regulatory framework that's proportionate to risk, and in particular, a change in Section 163. And we would say that there should be no use of gene technology that would result in the direct release of an organism into the environment, prior to demonstration that it meets the criteria of a risk tiering framework, including the exemption criteria. So once you have an organism that you believe is indistinguishable from that which can be made by conventional process, at that point, you can tier the risk. And I would just like to make 3 points from our submission for the committee. The first one is genome editing tools are nothing other than potent mutagens. That is what makes them attractive to us genetic engineers. And yes, I'm a genetic engineer too, and have been for over 30 years. But they're not being developed in isolation. They're also being co-developed with new innovations in chemical and biological vectors that have the ability to deliver these potent mutagens without regard to species. And that's what makes them different and new. Genome editing is not new. These approaches have been developed since the late 1970s. They were in use in bacteria, fungi, and animals already by the early 1990s. What's new are some new tools like CRISPR-Cas, which are like electric screwdrivers to the screwdriver, the manual screwdriver that we had 30 and 40 years ago. And indeed, they can be used in sequence and in what are called multiplex reactions that bear no resemblance whatsoever to conventional processes. If you look at page 21 of our submission, our primary submission, we have a quote there from the United States Department of Agriculture, which reaffirms that when proposed exempted techniques are used in sequence or in multiplex, they do not appear in any way to resemble a conventional process. Secondly, no use of gene technology, including SDN1 reactions, as proposed to be exempt, result in only the kinds of organisms that we're calling the product of conventional processes. Every use generates a spectrum of outcomes, and that spectrum includes transgenic organisms, unintended off-target effects in those intended organisms, and the intended organism. And it does so, as you can see in table 1 of our submission, at frequencies that rival the frequency of anything you wanted to make. The point isn't that these reactions create only what you think is low risk. They create a spectrum of outcomes, and you get to the low risk one by purifying them away from the byproducts of those reactions. You can only do that if you have used that gene technology in a registered containment facility, and then after purification, decided whether it met the criteria for expedited release. And the third point I would make, and it's something I've been hearing this morning, is the idea that other mutagens, like chemical and radiation mutagens, are exempt. Well, they are exempt from our GMO regulations, but that's not the same thing as unregulated. Chemical and radiation mutagens are tightly regulated. You cannot use them or release an organism that has been exposed to them because they have to be used in registered containment facilities by licensed and trained personnel. This bill would take other potent mutagens outside of that context by allowing them to be used outside of containment, which is nothing we ever do with other kinds of mutagens, as well as give us no control or ability to trace unintended exposed organisms to those mutagens. So thank you. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. I saw Steve had his hand up earlier, and then I'll go to Hamish.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very substantive submission. How radical is the proposed liberalisation of the regime here compared to, say, what the United States does in terms of plants, animals, and gene editing?
I think it very well could be that the United States is the birthplace of this standard of conventional process. And even it now has withdrawn that as a standard. So a December 2024 court case now makes the US again regulating even gene-edited products in plants. Prior to that decision, the United States had only allowed such an exemption for plants. So unlike the United States, New Zealand would leapfrog into any organism that could be of any type of organism, bacterial, fungal, plant, or animal, could be exposed to these mutagens purposefully or unintentionally and be deregulated. Plus, if it were progressed, it would only have to meet what the National Academies of Science, the US National Academies of Sciences says is a scientifically unjustified hazard comparison. And that scientifically unjustified hazard comparison is to something that hypothetically could be made through a conventional process.
So we'd be more radically liberalised than the United States?
On those criteria, I believe so.
Hamish?
Excellent. Just some quick questions. If you were to expose an organism to ultraviolet light, what regulation to create mutations, what regulation would that fall under? So you talked about chemical mutagenesis, and you're saying it's all regulated, ultraviolet light.
In that case, they're not regulated by our GMO regulations. It is the mutagen itself that's regulated, which means that you can only access that mutagen.
So specifically ultraviolet light.
Oh, that or a cobalt-60 source or EMS, something like that.
I appreciate cobalt-60, it's regulated, but there's many other ways you can mutate DNA, such as ultraviolet light. You're saying it's all regulated. How is that regulated?
Right. So there are really poor mutagens, ones that you have to use that would be very inefficient to use in this process. And there are lots of mutagens around us all the time. The difference is, though, that if you get to a potent mutagen, one in which you can increase the production scalability of a specific outcome a millionfold above background, which is what you can do with genome editing, then the harm as well scales. So the issue isn't that you couldn't use something like an ionizing radiation source to cause some low-level mutation frequencies, but if you're working to a particular mutant, these types of site-directed processes get you to that faster in multiple genes simultaneously through repeated processes that can further get more genes, but at the same time, they're also precisely doing that in genes you didn't want them to do it in because they're more efficient in all of them. And that would not be true of a background source like an X-ray from the sun.
So with your table 1, with your comparison of mutation power and other characteristics, you've got a whole lot of numbers there. Interesting you'd choose the first one to be spontaneous in an asexual tropical fruit, but we'll move on from that. Are you trying to insinuate that this is the background rate of mutation that's happening in effect off target from your single nucleotide you were trying to change with these technologies?
I'm not insinuating at all. It comes directly from the peer-reviewed literature. These are measures of spontaneous mutation rates, and those are what you would get in a conventional process.
Right.
At
We're
background
running
or
out
at
of
the
time.
specific point you're trying to mutate?
Oh, those would be background frequencies from the point in time you were looking for that trait to emerge.
Right. We're at time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wasn't it?
Who'd like to start?
Wow, very, very impressive. See, this is the chilling thing when you have some of our most highly qualified, independent New Zealand scientists analyzing this controversial and risky and dangerous bill. It's actually quite shocking. And perhaps Nick, you'd like to comment first?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that jumps out for me is the comment around that we are, in effect, running ahead of international comparator regimes. And there's no real, I mean, that's one of the core criticisms. There's no real explanation for that. There's no real reason that's put forward as to why we need to run ahead of Australia, the US, around
On this particular issue, especially.
Yeah, particularly, and I think that's a particularly it's a big criticism, and it needs a serious answer as to why we're running ahead of regimes in this space, and I think we haven't had a serious answer to that, and I think if we are going to run ahead, we need to have an answer there. So that for me was the big one that stood out during that really comprehensive presentation there from Dr. Jack, who was just on the panel before. So we have a bringing together there of.
I think we have so much of that today of like seeing, was it panelists, submissions that not quite when they're on the panel, but yes, crossing paths. I mean, I remember watching Laura's one about, not Laura's one, Linda's one about 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
Pardon? What was that?
Watching your submission.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually had a really bad toothache that day, so it was not that easy for me. But
You pulled it off.
hope it came across well. And I just wanted to say I'm getting really quite tired of this argument. Oh, if we don't deregulate outdoor GMOs, we'll be left behind. We're going to miss the bus. Really? We actually do not want to go down the road that, for example, the US has gone, who has the most permissive regime
It's not like we're trying to land on the moon.
Yeah, and just the way that they have gone, the numerous lawsuits against farmers who've been contaminated by GMOs, the loss of access to key markets and premiums. They can only sell their corn.
Even The Good Wife managed to make a couple episodes around this issue. I mean,
I think you're frozen there, Sam.
Cryogenically frozen.
Yeah. All right.
So what I
There we
was
go.
saying is New Zealand has an amazing advantage. We have a real point of difference. We are in the business of producing safe and clean, nutritious food of the highest quality to our most discerning markets. They certainly don't want GMOs. And that's the other chilling thing about this bill. It's not only pushing utter deregulation, including the most dangerous technologies, which some boffin can be doing in their garage, but they're also talking about not having labeling, particularly of the CRISPR gene edited food or organisms. So if it's invisible to the eye and not labeled, basically means consumers our right to know and our choice is being taken away, which is completely unacceptable and unethical.
Well, you're right, Linda. I mean, that's one of the other big criticisms is around that we've spent decades building up our GE-free, clean, green image and brand, and this is going to almost destroy it overnight. And we've also spent a lot of time working on food labeling and harmonizing the regimes, particularly between New Zealand and Australia. And this is going to almost completely, well, it's going to completely bypass that whole process. So I think those are very good points.
And look
And
at the
welcome, Laura.
submission.
We have a new.
Oh. And look at the submission from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, MFAT. They don't make submissions very often opposing legislation, and they are extremely concerned about essentially sabotaging our access to key markets and premiums. Yeah, and that combined with the no precautionary approach, no ethical considerations, and of course, no liability, seems to me a perfect storm for a real major problem for New Zealand.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Laura.
I think you got your.
Am I on mute?
Yeah. There we
I
go.
was on mute. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're waiting for Sam to genetically modify his internet connection. I don't know if Stacey's got access to the footage that he was using before. Stacey's got it lined up. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Stacey. You're a lifesaver. All right. Shall we continue?
Can I make one comment?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Linda.
I just note the kind of, it would be amusing if it wasn't so disrespectful. The National Party MP, is it Dr. Hamish Campbell?
Yeah.
Accusing Professor Jack Heinemann, our most highly qualified independent scientist and genetic engineer, of insinuating. And of course, Jack just very calmly with a smile said, oh no, actually it's the research and it's the literature. I'm not insinuating anything.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys looked over his written submission? It's pretty in depth. Like
Yeah.
You know, it's like a small book.
And what I take from that, because I'm not a qualified scientist and just a farmer, but this gene editing and all the misinformation that it is safe and precise, which it certainly isn't, and there's heaps of evidence. Like if you look at the MIT Technology Review in 2019 about the CRISPR, the gene edited polled cattle, they decided that it's not enough having the various breeds of hornless cattle that we have and that are highly valuable. They wanted to gene edit them so that they could have new polled breeds faster. Yep. And they were the poster animal for the biotech industry, these wonderful gene-edited hornless cattle. But, oh dear, the FDA, who normally is pretty slack, actually deigned to look into one of the bulls, a bull named Bury, and found that the animals, the genome was contaminated with the antibiotic-resistant marker gene. I mean, you really do not want that kind of thing in animals for food. So it just goes to show they have no idea of these unintended and unforeseen adverse effects. The companies doing it, who have a pecuniary and a proprietary interest, aren't interested in looking. And because the gene editing, from what I understand from Professor Heinemann's very substantive submission, is so fast, that's what makes it even more dangerous, because it isn't safe and precise, but it is faster. And that really does concern me. And I note that the physicians and scientists for global responsibility New Zealand, their substantive submission also addresses that, the imprecision and the dangers of these new genetic technologies.
Welcome back, Sam. Guys,
Yep,
lovely to meet you. I'm
same
gonna
issue
dip out.
as last time, the router. Not the
The
computer,
router.
the router.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the new rule is when I take my break, I shut down and reboot my computer, which will give the router, it will reset something in the router that will do it. I don't know why it does it, because, I mean, but then if it, if it does, it's a weird one, because if it does it during the day, it's no biggie. It's only when it's in broadcast, it's a problem. But I think, was it last week? Didn't this happen when you were on last time with me, Nick?
I think it did. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it was last week. I think it was the week before.
I'm not taking this personal, Sam, but this is becoming it's becoming something that we're anyway. That's okay. Let's carry on.
Yeah. Okay. So
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook